Right now, your brain is making a silent calculation before you even realize it is happening. It's weighing effort against relief, discipline against escape, presence against the next easy hit of stimulation. That pull is not proof that you're weak or broken. It's proof that your attention has been trained.
For a long time, I thought the problem was me. Every relapse sounded like the same accusation in my head, over and over again. You need more discipline. You need more control. You should be stronger than this by now. So I kept trying harder, and I kept ending up in the same place anyway. Because effort was never the real issue underneath all of it. My brain was doing exactly what it had been conditioned, rewarded, and repeated to do. It was living inside an environment built to keep me reactive, distracted, and hungry for more stimulation.
So in this video, I'm not talking about shame, motivation, or empty self-help slogans that fade tomorrow.
I'm showing you the mechanism and then the reset that changes the equation in a practical way.
Most people think dopamine is the chemical of pleasure. That sounds simple, clean, and useful, but it hides the real problem. Dopamine is less about enjoyment itself and more about pursuit, anticipation, and chasing. It is the signal that points your mind toward what it expects might reward you next.
That is why your hand can reach for a screen before your thinking mind fully wakes up.
That is why one tab becomes 6, one urge becomes a spiral, and one evening disappears.
The system is not asking whether something is meaningful, wise, or good for your future self.
Does it want me? Am I hooked? Right now? Again?
Picture a sensitivity dial inside your brain.
When that dial is balanced, ordinary life still has color, depth, and emotional texture. Sunlight feels good. Progress feels satisfying. But when high stimulation floods that dial again and again, the calibration slowly shifts upward. Normal life starts feeling dull, not because life changed, but because your baseline changed first. Books feel flat. Silence feels heavy. Real people cannot compete with infinite novelty on demand. That is downregulation. It is not a moral failure, and it is not a personal defect in your character. Like eyes adjusting to harsh light, your brain turns sensitivity down to survive overload. And when sensitivity drops, you feel less from normal life and crave more from artificial spikes.
So the numbness is not your identity, and it is not your final personality. It is your nervous system trying to defend itself inside an unhealthy loop for too long. Then people try to solve this with willpower alone. They understand the pattern, make a promise, and hold the line for a few days. Sometimes even for a week, and then they assume they are finally fixed.
Then stress hits, boredom creeps in, or a quiet evening feels unbearable and strangely dangerous. And the loop snaps shut again before they understand what happened.
Here is why that keeps happening so predictably.
Willpower is not a permanent trait, and you switch on forever and carry intact through chaos. It is a limited resource you spend all day long, decision by decision. Every choice drains it a little. Work, messages, food, delays, pressure, frustration, deadlines, decisions.
By the end of the day, that reserve is thin, scattered, and easier to overwhelm.
And that is usually when the urge gets louder, sharper, and more persuasive.
That is not bad luck. That is timing by design.
The systems competing for your attention were engineered to hit you when resistance is low.
So this is not just a fight against yourself. It is a fight against design, repetition, and access.
That is why the answer is not more force. The answer is a better system.
I call it the Dopamine Reset.
Not a punishment, not a lifetime vow. A recalibration window with rules you can actually follow. 3 phases, 14 days, clear rules, less drama, more control.
Phase 1 is the interrupt, days 1 through 3. Your only job there is to break the automatic chain before it builds momentum. Remove your highest stimulation inputs for 3 days, completely and intentionally. Not forever, just long enough to hear your own mind again, without constant intrusion. Think of it as creating silence after too much noise and too much artificial signal. Phase 2 is the rebuild, days 4 through 7. Now you do not just remove. You replace the old pattern with lower intensity signals. Lower intensity signals need to come back online before your brain trusts ordinary life again.
The movement begins now. Cold water will strengthen me. Sunlight guides my way forward. I will walk.
These are not punishments. They are recalibration cues for a system that forgot balance.
They remind your brain that reward still exists outside the screen and outside the urge.
Phase 3 is the anchor, days 8 through 14. The system starts to stabilize and stops swinging wildly. Tension gets cleaner. The static lowers. Small things begin to matter again, in a real way. Focus does not feel impossible. Conversation does not feel empty. Purpose starts feeling reachable again. Not because you became superhuman, but because you stopped living at maximum stimulation every day.
3 days to interrupt, 7 to rebuild, 14 to anchor. That is the architecture.
But knowing the map is not enough if your environment still leads you back into the same trap.
Most resets fail because people try to build a new pattern inside the old architecture.
So change the architecture before you ask for heroic discipline.
First, get the phone out of the bedroom.
The opening and closing minutes of your day are when resistance is weakest and habits are fastest.
If the object is gone, the first decision disappears with it.
Install friction everywhere the old loop wants speed, privacy, and convenience.
Put devices in another room.
The goal is not to make relapse impossible forever.
The goal is to create one visible pause between impulse and action that you can actually feel. That pause is where choice returns, and choice is where the reset survives.
The urge is present. Protocol engaged. 1, 2, 3.
Do not ask yourself to invent a plan under pressure, late at night, while tired.
Have one waiting: cold water, push-ups, a hallway walk, a notebook, a call, a shower.
Not because the action is magic, but because interruption teaches the brain a new route. The body chooses a new route away from the old desk. And before I close, I need to say something directly and clearly. The first days of a reset often feel wrong, even when the reset is working.
The silence is getting to me. I need to break this cycle.
Your brain may whisper that this gray feeling is the real you, without stimulation. It is not the truth. It is withdrawal speaking while your system recalibrates back toward baseline. Day 1 to 3 is usually the hardest stretch. Around day 7, something softer begins shifting. And by 2 weeks, other people may notice your presence before you fully do. You are not trying to become someone else. You are taking your attention back from a system that profits when you stay fragmented and impulsive. This reset is not a cure-all. It is a way to lower the volume and hear yourself again. So do not wait for Monday, next month, or the perfect mindset that never really comes. Start today with one visible change you can name and repeat. When this video ends, tell me your starting point in the comments. Day 0, day 1, wherever you are. And if this gave you something real, pass it to one person who still thinks the problem is them